Hi guys, it's Noelle. Today I'm going to share with you kind of the stories of how Zoe and Zara came to join our family and kind of the process and their birth stories. So I know I've promised in previous videos that I would do a video on their birth stories, so this is it. So Zoe, I got pregnant with her in May of 2010. I don't know how much backstory I've shared, but Herschel and I, we found out that I was pregnant. He has never been pregnant, nor will he ever be. But we found out that we were going to be having a baby in May of 2010. We had gotten engaged in February of 2009, and we were planning a summer 2011 wedding to give us a year. Wait, did I say 2009? I meant 2010. Okay. Rewind. We got engaged in February 2010. We were planning a summer wedding of 2011. In May, then we found out that I was pregnant. And so instead of waiting till summer of 2011, because the whole purpose was to save up for a wedding, save money. We knew that if we had a kid, like, we wouldn't have money to be able to put towards a wedding, regardless if we waited a year or not. So we decided to go ahead and get married that summer, and so we just did a pretty low budget wedding. It was beautiful, but it was pretty low budget. So then I was in grad school. I don't know how much I've talked about my education either, but I went to grad school for social work, so I got my master's in social work, and I got pregnant, found out I was pregnant the summer in between the 2 years of grad school. So found out in May, so right at the tail end of my first year of grad school, and so I wasn't sure like how I was going to finish grad school and everything. But things worked out because I ended up having a January baby. So pregnancy and everything, I didn't really know what to expect because it was the first time. So we just kind of went along. Like, I was not in the best shape. And I started out overweight as it was, carrying more weight than what I needed to. And so I ended up with some complications of that pregnancy. I ended up with gestational diabetes, and so during that pregnancy I had to check my sugars 4 times a day, and I had to keep everything within range. I never had to go on any kind of medication for the diabetes. I controlled everything with diet, like to the point where like I measured out everything that I ate, measured my rice, measured my vegetables, did all that to make sure that I could keep everything in check. So I kept it in check for the most part. It was hard because during that time it was like Thanksgiving holiday and Christmas and, you know, all the holidays where there's tons of good food to eat and everything. And so, but I did a pretty good job keeping everything in check. So did that. She was slated to be, I think her due date was January 29th. And so it was the night of the 24th. I was like, okay, you know what? Let's go and have a final like dinner out. And so I'd been craving Korean, and in Indianapolis there's a so if you're watching and you live in Indiana, pay attention. There's a place up in Fishers called Cafe Korea, which is probably one of my favorite Korean restaurants I've ever been to, even including the ones here. So went there, we had a nice dinner, like I chowed down, and it was great. So we went home, and you can go.
Excuse me, bruh.
So we went home, and it was like 10 o'clock or so, and we fell asleep on the couch. And I woke up.
What's up, bro?
That's Zoe. Hang on. So we got home around 10 o'clock and we were both, I was stuffed, he was stuffed, we were tired. And so we laid down on the couch, fell asleep, and I woke up and I was like, something just doesn't feel right. And I stood up and I felt this like rush of fluid. And I was like, oh my gosh, I think my water broke. So I like nudged him. I'm like, HershNoeie. I'm like, I think my water just broke. And so he's like asleep. What? Oh my goodness. Oh my gosh. And I'm like, chill out. Like I already had my hospital bag packed and everything. And I was like, let's just grab the stuff and go. So, you know, got some towels and everything for the car. I mean, it wasn't like gushing or anything like that, but it was a little like, it was just weird because I didn't know what to expect. And so we lived on the north side of Indianapolis and the hospital where I was delivering was downtown. So it was like, I don't know, a 25-minute drive or so. And so we were driving. So this was like 11:45 at night. And on the way to the hospital, there was a building on fire. So we thought it was snowing because there was these little like flakes hitting the car, but it was, ash, and there was an apartment building on fire. And so that was kind of crazy that we drove past that. So then we, I'm telling about how you were born. So then we get to the hospital and, Herschel didn't know where to park. So we just like get to the garage and there's an attendant there. And, he was like, you know, where do I park? You know, my wife's
Zoe.
hang on. And, so he's like, you know, my wife, like, her water broke and, like, I don't know what to do. And the guy was, like, of no help. And so...
A TV turned on by itself.
It did? Okay. Well, you can watch whatever you want to watch.
I want to watch Doc McStuffins.
Can you find Doc McStuffins for her, please? Please? Thank you. Okay, sister's going to find it. Zoe May. So anyway, so we get into the hospital. Did they put me in a wheelchair? You're not paying attention. We get into the hospital and everything. And like I said, so by this time it's probably 12:30 or so. And get into the room and, you know, we think that things are going to progress. I think I was dilated like 3 centimeters. And we were just, you know, it was the waiting game. But what I didn't know is that I had developed preeclampsia. So my blood pressure was high. So I don't know exactly the whole chain of events because it was just kind of a whirlwind. But at one point, because my blood pressure was so high, they put me on magnesium to keep the blood pressure in check. And I was also, they also started me on Pitocin, to help start, my body to start contractions. And so that was probably, I want to say like around 5 in the morning or so. And nothing was really happening. I was just starting, I was kind of like in this like drug stupor, I guess. It was just kind of, I was groggy. I wasn't feeling well. You know, they were concerned about Zoe because her heart rate was kind of fluctuating. My blood pressure was increasing, and I wasn't going anywhere. I wasn't dilating, and no matter whatever they were trying to do, because my water had already broke. So the time was kind of already ticking in terms of safety for the baby, safety for myself. But I was like, you know, no, I want to try to have a natural birth if I can. Not natural, like without drugs, but, you know, a vaginal birth. And so they came in at one point to do my epidural. And the anesthesiologist who was doing it, I don't know if he was brand new or what the situation was, but it took him 5 attempts to put the epidural, to give me the epidural. Like I was poked 5 different times in my back. And I gotta say, it still never really fully took. So that was a harrowing experience to be going through. And, you know, and I'm slow on the magnesium and I have the Pitocin going and everything. Like I was just hooked up everywhere. I had oxygen. So things weren't looking well. So there came a point where the doctor came in and said, look, this is what's going on. Your blood pressure is increasing. Her heart rate continues to dip. Your water's already broken, so that barrier is already compromised. You're not dilating. My body just wasn't, Zoe, even though my water broke, Zoe was not wanting to come out. So I had to, at that point, sign papers that, yes, I would go into, I would do a C-section. So at that point, I had to sign all these papers, but meanwhile, like, everything's a whirlwind. I'm worried, you know, I'm anxious. I'm not really sure what's going on. And they're telling me all this, like, you can die, your baby can die, like, there's all these complications and you have to sign all these waivers and everything, and it was just overwhelming. And so it was then at 6:30 in the evening, so this is now the next day, 6:30 in the evening that I went in for surgery. So she was officially born at 6:33 p.m. I was not able to see her because as soon as she was born, she was having having difficulty breathing, so she wasn't able to fully breathe on her own. So I didn't get to see her or anything. I'm already like all overwhelmed. Herschel's worried. Oh, after they put the epidural in, I got sick. Like, as soon as they did it, like, you know, I laid back down and stuff and like waited for it to kick in and stuff, and then I was like, something didn't feel right, and I was like, I'm gonna get sick. So Herschel was trying to help me, the nurses are trying to help me, and it was just like, I got sick. It was just not a fun or exciting experience. I mean, she's worth it, but oh. So yeah. So she was born at 6:33. They rushed her right over to the NICU area, and we're trying to get her to breathe because she wasn't pushed through the birth canal.
Umbilical cord.
Yes, they took care of your umbilical cord. Because she wasn't pushed through my birth canal, like, she had a lot more fluid and stuff in her nose and everything, because normally that, like, gets all squeezed out when they come through the birth canal. So, Herschel was over there, like, trying to watch what was going on. They're stitching me up and everything. So, after they finished me, I went to the recovery room. I still have not seen my baby. She's in the NICU area. Zoe, hang on. And Herschel was over there with her too, you know, trying to keep an eye on her. So I was in the recovery room all by myself, like completely alone. No doctors, no nurses, no Herschel, no baby. And it was, Zoe, it was awful. Like, it was not a fun experience. And so, like, I don't know what's going on with my baby. Like, I don't know where Herschel is. Like, I'm just alone in this room. So finally they came in. Herschel came to see me, you know, to let me know, like, she's doing better. She was stabilized. She was breathing. But they're going to keep her for observation for a little bit longer. So, mind you, I get out of recovery around 9:45. So she was born at 6:33. Finally was okay to leave recovery around 9:45, and that point then they were able to wheel me into the NICU area, and I was finally able to see my baby for the first time. So she was about 3 hours old before I actually got to see her and touch her or anything like that. So that was just a kind of a surreal experience, I guess. But as soon as, like, I saw her, it was just, everything was, like, that was my baby. Like, she was mine, she was ours, like, she was doing good. So it was just, okay, like, I felt, like, better having gone through all of that stuff. Like, she's okay, I'm okay. You know, we're all in this together. So then I went to my room. She continued to get stronger and stronger, and by midnight they released her from the NICU, and she was completely fine. So by midnight then, she was brought into my room, and she has been inseparable since. So that was the story of Zoe. So I spent, let's see, So I checked into the hospital. It was Monday night. She was born on the following Tuesday evening, and then we didn't leave the hospital until Friday evening. So I was in there for a while. Quite an ordeal. Having gone through, you know, kind of laboring, I guess, all through that, and then with an emergency C-section. So it was about 19 hours of labor, I guess. But I never really got to the point where they would have let me push or anything. I'd never really dilated past 7 centimeters. So it would have had to have been a C-section the way it ended. Also, Zoe was like, her neck was like cocked back. So it's like she would have put up a fight anyway, trying to come out vaginally regardless. So that's how we brought the Zoester, Zoe May, into this world. She was 5 pounds, 15 ounces, which is funny because they had told me to expect like an 8-pound baby. And she was tiny. Like, we didn't have any newborn clothes or anything because I had been told by so many people, like, oh, don't bother getting newborn clothes because they will, like, more than likely come out and they'll already be too big for those. So we didn't have any. So we had to buy, we actually had to get some, like, we got a couple preemie outfits because even newborn was too big on her. So she was this tiny little thing. She quickly plumped up though. So that's how little Zozo came to be. And then Zara, so we were living in New Mexico. We had moved to New Mexico in December of 2011? Yes, I believe so. Yeah, so Zoe was born in January 2011. We moved to New Mexico in December of 2011. So she actually had her first birthday in New Mexico. So we lived there. We bought a house in April of 2012, so we were there for about 6 months. We did a 6-month lease, and then we bought a house in New Mexico, and then we, you know, things were just cruising along. We were in a routine. Zozo was getting bigger, growing up, and we knew that we wanted to have another baby. Like, we had already talked about in terms of timelines and stuff, like 2 years was a good spacing that we wanted. And then it just happened that we found out that I was pregnant with Zara, and the timing of that was almost exactly 2 years that Zoe turned 2 in January, and then Zara was born in March. So it was perfect timing. So they're exactly like, they're 25.5 months apart. So Zara, I had actually lost a lot of weight during the time that we were living in New Mexico, and so I had slimmed down to a pretty decent size for, you know, for my frame and all of that, and I was happy. And so I was in a healthier, my body was healthier when I got pregnant with Zara than it was with Zoe. So I actually didn't have any complications during my pregnancy with Zara. It was a pretty easy pregnancy. And I certainly dealt with anxiety throughout that pregnancy, as I did with the first one as well, just because I deal with anxiety outside of being pregnant. So I had to manage that, but I didn't have any issues with gestational diabetes, none of that. My blood pressure was a little bit elevated, but for whatever reason, the doctors didn't really seem that concerned until it got much closer. So I think she was supposed to be like a March 27th baby. It was her due date. And then no, maybe it was March 29th was her due date. And then I was supposed to be induced on March 27th. So my plan was to do a VBAC. A VBAC is a vaginal birth after cesarean section, is what it stands for. So that was my goal, was to try to have a vaginal delivery with her. Well, my blood pressure was elevated towards the end of pregnancy, so I underwent some testing for preeclampsia. I had to do some urine collection, extra blood work, that kind of stuff. So I went in, this was on March 11th, I went in for my normal OB routine checkup, left Herschel at home with Zoe and everything. I just went in there by myself, and okay, so I went in for my normal routine checkup on Monday, March 11th, and the results from all of my additional testing that I had undergone for preeclampsia came back, and my doctor was like, okay, so all the signs like are pointing to, if we let you go any further in this pregnancy, you are going to develop preeclampsia. So I didn't necessarily have it in that moment, but had they let me progress, had I gone further in, I would have had it, and then there would have been additional complications. So because of what those results were, she said, we no longer can have you try to do a VBAC because the risk is too high. So I was scheduled for C-section. So again, this was Monday, March 11th. And so she was like, so, and my whole thing was, when I delivered, like, I wanted her to be able to be there, because my OB, I want my OB there, right? That's who I have the relationship with. That's who knows my history, all of that. So, she said, well, you know, if you want me to do it, I have openings this week, either tomorrow, which was Tuesday, or Thursday. And I was like, holy cannoli. Again, so I had gone to the doctor by myself, and I was like, can I like talk to Herschel about it and like get back with you? And she was like, yeah, you know, just call my scheduler as soon as you know to get it scheduled. It needs to happen this week. So I'm like, oh my goodness. Luckily the doctor's office was like 5 minutes from my house. So went home, and I was like, well, guess what? Because mind you, I was originally scheduled to be induced on March 27th. Then I ended up having the baby, or I ended up having Zara on Tuesday, March 12th. So we called around to all of our friends in our network to see who could help cover Zoe. And because also at that time when Zara was born, the hospital was not allowing anybody under the age of 12 in the hospital. So that proved to be more challenging, because we had to have coverage for Zoe the whole time, because I didn't want to go into delivery by myself, you know, like I wanted Herschel there, and also to be there for the birth of our baby and stuff. So, and also knowing I was going in for another C-section. So luckily we were able to work it all out, and the best time frame was to do it the next day. So, you know, we were ready, but like we weren't ready because we weren't prepared to be bringing a baby home for like another, what, 2 weeks? So it was kind of like, okay, we're bringing a baby home. So I went in on Tuesday. I checked in, got prepped and everything for surgery. I had a spinal block this time around with Zara instead of an epidural. So I had a spinal block, and I gotta say, that was beautiful. I didn't feel anything. One thing I left out in the story with Zoe is that, you know, the epidural never really took. So there were things that I felt during the C-section that I don't think you're supposed to be able to feel, but I did. The only way that I know how to describe it, and I'm sorry if this is too graphic, you know, if there's anybody that's out there watching that's pregnant, I apologize, because, you know, everybody shares your horror stories, but this is the story of how my kids came to be in this world. But the way that I can describe the pain from the C-section and like that experience was, you know, the deep sea fishermen who go out and catch the big fish and bring them back, and they have, you know, not planted, they've, you know, shored up their boats and everything, and they have their big catches, and they have the fish on the scales, and you see their pictures, and you like see how big the fish is, and like it's like the fish is up on the hook. Like, I felt like I was one of those fish, but like from my belly. It really felt like just the pain, the pressure, all of that. Like I felt that. Now, I didn't feel all of the pain, obviously, but I could not click my morphine drip enough after the surgery because it was just so painful. Like the epidural never fully took, so I was just feeling a lot of this stuff. It was not a positive experience. But fast forward 2 years to a planned C-section, and I had a spinal block, and it was such a night and day difference. And so I went in for surgery at, I don't know, at like 3 something. Zara was born at 3:12, on 3:12 actually, so that was kind of cool. And it was great. The surgery was quick and easy. I did have some scar tissue that the doctor had to take out, so the surgery was a little bit longer, but not really by much. And so her birth was completely uncomplicated and pretty easy. So so that was at 3 in the afternoon. And I guess subconsciously, because it was spinal block, so I was like temporarily paralyzed from the waist down. So I had a catheter and everything, and so I couldn't move. But I think subconsciously, I was like the whole time trying to move my feet. And at one point in the evening, all of a sudden I felt my toe move, and I saw the blanket move, and I was like, oh my gosh, I have movement again. And I'm like, I can move. And I was so excited. And so, you know, she was born at like 3:12 in the afternoon. By like 9:30, Herschel had already gone home because he was spending time with Zoe. But I called the nurse in. I was like, I have to get up out of this bed. And she's like, are you sure? And I'm like, I have to walk around. I was like, I can't sit any longer. So I was up walking around by like 9:30 after C-section and everything. I was just very motivated. I felt great. Everything was easy peasy. So that was such a those two experiences were so different. So here I am. I am now 25 weeks and almost 4 days pregnant. So we've got about 14 weeks to go. And, you know, if you've been watching my videos, you know that I've been dealing with high blood pressure. But for the last 6 weeks or so, my blood pressure has been great. Probably for the last 2 months, I guess now. So my blood pressure, excuse me, have stayed in check, so I no longer need the specialist or anything like that. So things are cruising along. I go back for my glucose. I have to do a repeat glucose test at my next appointment, which is May 31st. And if that comes back okay, then I'm pretty much in the clear. Like, I'm just kind of coasting along. So we are at this point looking at a delivery around the week of August 15th. Which will put me at 39 weeks. So that's kind of what we're aiming for now. That's what we're going for now. We're starting to get things for baby. Like, we already have the car seat. We have the pack and play. I'll do a video on that later. We have the changing table. And, you know, so we got a bouncer. So we have the major pieces, like, so we're just kind of playing the waiting game. So, anyway, those are the birth stories of how Zoe and Zara came to be. Hopefully you found this enjoyable or informative. Feel free to comment with your own stories below. Feel free to ask me questions if you're about to go into a situation. So this time around, I will be having another planned C-section. Hang on one second. TV's a little loud. So this will be a three-peat for me. This will be my third C-section. And it will be scheduled. I will probably do an epidural and a spinal block, the OB had mentioned, although I'm going to kind of lobby just for a spinal block, but we'll see. I mean, I follow doctors' recommendations pretty closely. So, I'm looking at hopefully a pretty easy birth with this one and a speedy recovery. I know that complications can happen and all of that, and you just got to be prepared for whatever may come my way. But at this point, it's just kind of the waiting game and moving along in this pregnancy. So if you want to see, I'll stand up. So there's the baby bump. I feel very pregnant right now. It's getting hot here in Seattle, so we'll see. But this is the baby bump. That's the reality of things at this point. And like I said, feel free to comment below, share your stories, like the video, give me a thumbs up if you liked it, subscribe, share. As always, thank you for your support, and see you later. Bye.